What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the episode of the Steelers Breakdown Podcast. And on Fridays, we like to have a guest on from the opposing side to talk a little bit about the opponent this week. This week, it's Lone Star Live's Dallas Cowboys reporter Aaron Katzins. Aaron, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Nick. Excited to be here and talk about a pretty important game on Sunday.
Yeah, it's a pretty important game Sunday night under the lights. Steelers Cowboys. Let's talk about the history first. This game has history seeped through it. Super Bowls. I remember in 2016 that game was incredible. That wasn't in prime time, but it was in 425, America's Game of the Week. Zeke Elliott wins it on a walk-off run. This game hasn't happened very often, but when it does, the fireworks usually come. Even 2020, if you remember that game, Steelers engineered a crazy comeback to win that one.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think obviously these two teams have played three times in Super Bowls. The Steelers were kind of established as the team of the '70s and beat the Cowboys a couple times. Cowboys won in '96, January '96 and '95 season. So yeah, like two of the most iconic franchises. Really, the marketability of the brands. I think these are two of the brands that helped elevate the NFL to the national sport it is today. And then, yeah, recently, just looking back, the last five games have all been decided by 7 points or less. The 2016 game, I think, was really important for the modern Cowboys because it's kind of Ben Roethlisberger and that crew was still kind of at their peak, but Dak Prescott, and Ezekiel Elliott were rookies, right? So having that big win in Pittsburgh on the road, rookie quarterback, that was kind of the game that I think solidified. Like, okay, Dak Prescott's the guy, and in some ways, that game, that win, helped probably end Tony Romo's career, right? Because it solidified that the Cowboys were going with Prescott and Elliott and this youth movement.
Yeah, it really did. And so that game had a lot of implications on it. The 2020 game, remember Ben Roethlisberger, that was him returning after his elbow injury. The Steelers went out to that 11-0 start. I think Cooper Rush started that game, might have been somebody else, but it was not Dak Prescott. The Steelers, so this is where I get to the next point. The Steelers, believe it or not, Dak Prescott has been in the league for this long. This is only the second time since that first time since that 2016 game. The Steelers are going to face Dak Prescott. This is the first time they're going to face CeeDee Lamb. It is a first for a lot of these guys facing each other. It just doesn't happen. Again, Steelers and Cowboys haven't had that off schedule year yet where, they play maybe every 2 years or whatever. And so this is a new matchup for a lot of guys. The Steelers don't really know Dak in stadium very well. Dak doesn't really know the Steelers super well in stadium. So talk to me about this offense. Obviously, it goes through CeeDee Lamb first. The run offense has struggled. Brandon Cooks is out. It's a little bit of a jumbled, thrown together sting, but we know what Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb are.
Yeah, so I mean, the last couple of years, the Cowboys have been, I don't want to say one dimensional, but their offense has really run through Prescott and CeeDee Lamb, and they've been really good, right? One of the top scoring offense, if you aggregate it over the past couple of years. This year, that's almost magnified because the running game, they don't have. A couple of years ago, Zeke Elliott was still one of the better running backs in the league. Last year, that Tony Pollard. This year, Zeke Elliott's back, but not just a shell of what he once was. And right now, none of their running backs average over 4 yards a carry. The advanced stats show the running backs are near the bottom of the league in expected yards per carry, right? They gain less than they're expected. So they really don't have a running game. They've got a couple rookies on the offensive line. Jake Ferguson's a nice tight end, but really, more than any team in the league, the Cowboys are invested in their best wide receiver and a really good quarterback. And Dak Prescott's really good, right? He was the second MVP runner-up last year, came second MVP voting. CeeDee Lamb led the league in receptions last year, so they're really, really good, but they're sort of one-dimensional, and it's hard to see how the Cowboys. Sure, you can move the ball with short passes. Prescott can spread the ball around, but it's hard to see how the Cowboys have any explosiveness or any consistency unless it's CeeDee Lamb. So I think the big thing, the Steelers are a good defense, right? Top five in scoring and yardage so far this year. Can a good defense stop an offense that is one-dimensional? That dimension is really, really good. So we'll see. And Lamb, you say one dimensional. Lamb has lined up as a running back. He lines up as a slot receiver a lot. He lines up out wide, obviously. So he's one of the most versatile, best wide receivers in a lot of realms in the league. They can use him a lot of ways, but he's really the one weapon that scares you on the Cowboys. And it'll be interesting to see how the Steelers defend him.
Yeah, it's funny. I was reading a stat. The Cowboys land 4 yards of 10 yards or more, and CeeDee Lamb has three of them, which is
Right.
just
Yeah.
crazy. But it shows how much
He,
the offense goes through him, right?
yeah. He's their best slot receiver, their best outside receiver, and their best running back right at this point in the season, which is
Right.
a weird thing to say, but it's true if you look at the numbers and look at the tape.
Right, and I think this is an interesting matchup. The Steelers' defensive line is obviously fantastic. It's an inexperienced group up front, as you said, but Dak Prescott gets the ball out really quick. He's been blitzed a lot, though. I think he's blitzed like the seventh most rate, highest rate in the NFL this year. Um, but the Steelers just had kind of the blueprint put out on them by Shane Steichen and the Colts. It's a different offense. Mike McCarthy doesn't utilize a lot of the same things that Steichen does, but moving CeeDee Lamb into the slot, is Joey Porter Jr. going to follow him? There's a lot of variables to that. It's going to be really hard to slow down CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott just because that's a different type of connection. We know that Steelers fans know that if you watched, Big Ben and AB, I mean, those guys were
Right.
ascended to a different plane, and uh, you know, Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb are just a special type of connection. They've been together for so long, and it's an elite duo. And so that's going to be a really, really hard one. Let's go to the defensive side of the ball. Just kind of do that. This defense is so injured right now, Aaron,
Yeah.
and that's like my first takeaway. A lot of hype coming into the year that this defense was going to be really good. They were top 10 most metrics last year. Micah Parsons is out for this game. Demarcus Lawrence is out for this game. Deron Bland's out for this game. Both of Lawrence and Parsons' backup Sam Williams is out for this game. So Marshawn Nealon's going to get the start. It's going to be no Trayvon Diggs got added to the list. I don't think that's too concerning, but um, this is a really really banged up defense. And what are they doing up front? Who's going
Yeah.
to start on the edge opposite of Nealand? And where
Yeah.
we think Kalen Carson's going to play? Like what's going on?
Yeah, so yeah, I think this is really the game where you sort of figure all that out. That's if you take Parsons, Lawrence, and Bland, just those three, that would be three Pro Bowlers from last year out of the game. I guess we should say Michael Parsons has not been officially ruled out. My guess would be he'll be officially ruled out by today's injury report. High ankle sprain probably will keep him out even another week. But um, both Bland and Lawrence on IR, so they won't play. So yeah, that's a big blow up front. Marshawn Nealon, second round rookie, Western Michigan. He's shown some bursts, but hasn't been on the field for he hasn't been a 3 down player or anything like that. Really just kind of been a pass rush guy these first couple of weeks. So like now all of a sudden he's got to do everything, right? Chauncey Golston is a guy who I would expect to play a lot. He can line up a defensive tackle or defensive end. He's kind of a guy they've moved around, fourth year guy, but again, never has been a full time player. They signed KJ Henry off the Bengals practice squad, fifth round pick from the Commanders last year. He's supposed to be kind of a speed rusher, so maybe he replaces some of what Parsons gives you. Carl Lawson is a veteran on the practice squad. Tyrus Wheat. It's all these names that are like, even if you're a football fan, you're probably like, I haven't heard of those guys. That's because the Cowboys' top three defensive ends are all out, right? So no team has four Pro Bowl edge rushers, as much as all teams would love that. So it's going to be a struggle to put pressure on Justin Fields and kind of keep the running game in check because these are young and experienced guys. You mentioned Kellen Carson. He's got a shoulder. He's a rookie, fifth round rookie. He's been starting at cornerback in place of Deron Bland. Last week, with him out, the Cowboys rotated guys in. They couldn't really find a good solution. Trayvon Diggs, the other cornerback, he did show up on the injury report with the ankle injury, so something to monitor. It seems like he'll be okay, but something to monitor there. So yeah, it's a banged up defense. The big thing is this is Mike Zimmer's first year as defensive coordinator, right? And things haven't gone so smooth yet, right? The Cowboys in their 2 losses really got burned, especially on the ground. So I think this is a big test of not just the players, but does Mike Zimmer have a defense in place that can withstand the loss of all of these star players?
It's interesting, some of the underlying stats here. The Cowboys do not blitz much. I think they're 21st in the league in blitz rate. Mike Zimmer has historically kind of been a guy that does blitz, and with his two edge rushers down, I expect that to change this week. I expect them to blitz more. Steelers will face a ton of run blitzing too. They did that against the Colts, and that's why their run game has been horribly inefficient on early downs. But I've been telling people this week, if the Steelers cannot run this week, they're not going to run against anybody. I truly believe that. They couldn't run last week against the Colts. They can't run this week. I mean, I think they've already entered to me, believe it until I see it territory where even if they face a bad run defense, I'm like, I want to see them run well first, but we'll see.
So
Justin Fields, though, I think this is a matchup where his legs could be a huge factor. So we'll see there. If they can get Najee Harris going, I think the Cowboys, to me, Aaron, the biggest thing they need to do is they need to stop the run because if Najee Harris and other guys can get going. Aaron Shanklin, it sounds like, is probably going to be the second running back as Cordero Patterson, Jalen Warren are hurt.
mhm.
But if Justin Fields and Najee Harris can get going on the ground, my concern for the Cowboys would be it doesn't matter what CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott do on the other side because the Steelers are just going to run 8, 9 minute drives, and if they can pound that in for 7 every time, that's going to favor the Steelers every time. That's the game script they want. And so the Cowboys, if you're looking at this from a whole game point, probably want to get out to an early lead. Dak Prescott, and CeeDee Lamb, scoring early, and that defense is going to want to put the Steelers behind the six and not let them run this football. They're going to want to have it kind of like last week where the Steelers got down 17-0, and Justin Fields had to put his cape on, and they kind of had to abandon their entire game script.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the Cowboys know that they're built to play from ahead, or they were, right? Their defense was built. They got all these fast guys. They've got Parsons and Lawrence on the edge. They're built to play from ahead. Now all of a sudden you don't have those star edge rushers, so you really need to. It's even more important to play from ahead because they don't have the kind of playmaking ability on defense that really can stop the Steelers if they get rolling. Um, the Cowboys gave up, I think, 464 rushing yards in weeks 2 and 3 combined. Just got obliterated on the ground. Part of that, I mean, playing the Ravens is tough with the Henry Lamar Jackson, but historically bad. A little stretch there with the run defense, and then last week in New York, pretty good, right? They held the Giants to 26 yards on 24 carries, so pretty good. Mozzie Smith, young defense tackle, had his best game in New York. They got a couple decent linebackers. Eric Kendricks is the veteran, but they got some good young linebackers. DeMarvion Overshawn is a guy who'll probably make some plays. So I think from the Steelers' perspective, you really got to start to establish this is your chance to establish the run if you look at the stats. From the Cowboys' perspective, it's okay, did we make some progress with the run defense and can we sustain it without some of those defensive ends we have? I do agree with you. I think the Cowboys will blitz a little bit more. I would, with those stats, Zimmer has never been like a lead the league in blitz guy, but he's usually in the top half. But I think the Cowboys have played from behind so much. The Saints and the Ravens just jumped out to these huge leads on them that they didn't get the chance to blitz, right? Because the run games were so impressive. So I agree with you. I think the Cowboys will blitz a little bit more on Sunday than they have in the past. I think they'll have to. But I also agree the big matchup is can defense tackle Mozzie Smith, linebacker Eric Kendricks, can they control the run game? It was interesting to see that the Steelers haven't had a running back score a touchdown yet this year, right? Score a rushing touchdown, right? Does the Steelers can they get something go with Najee Harris? Because I think the Cowboys are built to contain Justin Fields running from sideline to sideline. I don't think they're built to really defend that tough physical runner, which should bode well for Najee Harris. So we'll see. It'll be interesting to see if the Steelers can finally get it going.
Yeah, there's so many schematic issues with the Steelers running game. I talked about it yesterday, but
Yeah.
I still am not super convinced they're going to be able to. I think they're going to be able to get explosive plays through the air. I think Fields has kind of proven himself actually to be able to overcome a lot of issues with the run game. And I think George Pickens, even though it's Trayvon Diggs and he's a really good corner, I think Pickens has started to play at a level where it doesn't really matter who's covering him. You kind of just say, okay, he's going to get fed targets. You don't take your own best weapon out of the game. So there's a few things there. I think it's kind of similar to what the Cowboys do now. I think Cowboys eligibles outside of Lamb. I like Ferguson. I think he's a guy that's gotten a lot of looks recently. Tolbert's going to get more looks this year with Cooks out, and even guys like Cavonte Turpin, Ryan Flournoy is probably going to make his NFL debut. Like there's a few guys there that are interesting. But if I were the Steelers, the two things I'd be worried about the most are that CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott take over this game on the offensive side of the ball and turn this into a shootout. And on the defensive side, you still can't run the football. Those are the two things that I think are worrying to the Steelers. And that way, if the Steelers can run the football, even a semblance of it, and you can take some of it off Justin Fields' plate, I think that's going to be very, very important for the Steelers. I like the Steelers matching up against the Cowboys on paper, but you have to look at the obvious issues that they will face on both sides of the ball there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a challenging game to predict because the injuries loom so large for the Cowboys. And we're still early in the season, right? I think the Steelers showed some encouraging signs early on, obviously getting those 3 wins, and as you mentioned, maybe kind of a blueprint is out for how to attack that defense last week. So it's interesting that these early games, Mike McCarthy, Cowboys coach, always talks about the unscouted looks that his team has to face, right, in September and early October. You don't know what you're going to get because teams are still rolling out new things. So I think it's a game that could go either way. Again, I think the big thing from the Cowboys' perspective on defense is, can the defensive ends hold up? Does this defense have enough structure, or was it just Michael Parsons was making plays and that's why they were a decent defense? And then on the offensive side of the ball, can they help CeeDee Lamb a little bit? Can they get something going? Whether it's Jake Ferguson, whether it's a run game, just so that they don't live or die by that one player.
Yeah, I think that's key for the Steelers. Again, same thing. Don't live or die by Justin Fields, and the defense needs to have a bounce back performance. They're a talented defense, but Terrell Austin needs to mix up the coverages a little bit more behind there because spot dropping zone against CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott usually doesn't end well. I'm just gonna say to that. So we will see what happens Sunday Night Football, though. So it's gonna be a fun one. Aaron, thanks for coming on. Make sure to tell them where they could follow you, read your stuff, all that great stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Nick. This was great. You can follow me personally on Twitter X at Aaron Kaz Reports, AARONKAZ Reports. And then we've got LoneStarLive.com is our relatively new website, part of the Advanced family. And that you can find at LoneStarLive.com/Cowboys is where you can look at our Cowboys content.
Make sure to follow him for the game. Make sure to read his stuff because lots of great stuff coming from the Cowboys side all year. Folks, thank you for listening to Steelers Breakdown. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn on the notification bell for more. Be back later today.